Okay, before we get started, I have to ask, who here has fallen through the ice while snowmobiling on a first date? Put up your hand if you've fallen through the, no, no? It's just me? Oh.
That's a bad date.
Well then.
There's more to that story.
Here we go. Maybe I need to be a bit.
Hold up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Scott Montague from Coquitlam Search and Rescue, and I'll be keeping our technology tanks topped up this evening. I've got some good news for you. If you stick around to the end of our session, you'll get a bit of a freebie from our sponsor, FatMap. Your cameras and mics are off for this session, but we still want to hear your comments and questions. On your screen is a question mark button or a question box. Use it to post anything you want to tell us, or ask a question and we'll either answer the online or in the Q&A part of our presentation. In fact, actually, let's give it a shot right now. Go over to that question mark box and type in where you're joining us from. So if you're joining us from, I don't know, Swahili? That's a language. You're not going to join us from a language. If you're going to join us from Zimbabwe, put in Zimbabwe. We'd love to know. While you're doing that, to get us started, please welcome the Executive Director of AdventureSmart in BC, our reigning monarch of SAR prevention in education, none other than Sandra Riches.
Wow, that sounds a bit crazy, but thanks, Scott. I appreciate the introduction. We have so much to talk about tonight, and most of it is not from me, thankfully. You get to hear me next week when we deliver our Backcountry Snow Safety Program. Tonight is all about snowmobiling safety and how that happens, and Julianne is our guest. She'll come on shortly. But first, I wanted to share a little bit of information about us and what we do. And Julianne's going to share that screen. If she could go full screen, that would be awesome. And we'll just poke through a few things that we like to share through BC AdventureSmart. You might have seen it in a social post already. If you've joined any of our previous webinars before tonight, you may have heard it, but friendly reminders don't hurt. Thanks. Awesome, Julianne. That's perfect. We have you till 8. Toss your questions over there. Scott's going to help us. And I'm really honored tonight to be joining you with 2 of the 2,600 in total BC Search and Rescue volunteers. Scott is with Coquitlam Search and Rescue, well-versed in SAR response, excellent tech savvy, thank goodness for his support behind the scenes and in front. And Julianne is also with Castlegar Search and Rescue. So really honored to have both of you here and hear your insights. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll just go over a few things that are our regular messaging. A little bit about me. I've been with the program since 2004, and before that I was a BC Park Ranger and worked closely and for the BC Search and Rescue Association, and that's who started the AdventureSmart program. We're in our 19th year now. Our main message, no matter where you go in British Columbia or throughout Canada, the program is national. You're going to hear about our 3T message, and this is what we call our trifecta of safety. It's really the foundation of what we want and ask you to do and encourage you to do, remind you to do before you head out there, and it equips you with ideas on how to handle an emergency. Trip planning is that first T. Planning your adventure. Tonight's all about snowmobiling. Julianne's going to elaborate on that. We have an AdventureSmart Trip Plan app that can help you do it, leaving all of that information at home with friends and family or emergency contact. who you've had this discussion with. They have an important role to play in case you don't return on time, who to phone, when, and what to share. All that information is left. It could be on a sticky note, pen and paper works, a text to a friend, trailhead selfie. The more detail, the better. And the app makes it easy. You just fill in the fields, email or text it to a friend. We can share that with you shortly. The second T is training. During the wintertime, avalanche skills training is incredibly important. If you spend time in the backcountry during the wintertime, first aid, risk management, mentorship or certification-based training is really what we want you to focus on for the activity and the season you play in. And then taking those essentials with you, always big or small adventure, and then add to it season and sport specific. For more details on that, head over to adventuresmart.ca. Check out the 3Ts page, link there, and you can check out more about that. Next slide, please. There's the app. We all know what to do with our phones. Take your camera, go over that QR code. It will take you directly to the AdventureSmart Trip Plan app. It's available to anyone in Canada. If you're outside of Canada, pen and paper will work for you to file your trip plan. And you can access that. It's free of charge to anyone in the country, and it's really simple to use. It's a tool, one of the many that we offer here at AdventureSmart throughout the province of BC and the rest of Canada. Next. One of my favorite sections of what we talk about, no matter the season, no matter the event we share in person or virtually, is what to do in an emergency. Julianne's going to fill your ear, and with so much information tonight about how to sled safely. But we know that in British Columbia, on an annual basis, during the COVID times, it was a little over 2,000 times a year there were search and rescue calls. We're trending back to pre-COVID statistics. We're at about just under 1,700 now. And so that's great. Accidents happen. We know that based on the statistics. What to do in an emergency is often confusing for some, or enthusiasts just aren't aware. We have the stop analogy. For the children, we have a program. It's called Hug a Tree and Survive. The same premise applied to adults is stopping, thinking, observing, and then planning. When you're in a safe location and when you know you need help and you've called, staying put is key. One quick story. Recently, about a week ago, Central Okanagan Search and Rescue were searching for subjects, and they called in, left their coordinates, and then they moved. That didn't bode well for search and rescue. It added time and effort for them to find them. It all ended well. Subjects were out 12 hours later, but them moving made it more difficult for search and rescue. The stop analogy is a really good, easy one to remember. Next. The number for search and rescue via dispatch of 911, then police or RCMP, is calling 911 and asking for police. I have close relations with all of the 78 search and rescue groups, friends, and feels like family of all the search and rescue volunteers. 2 of them are here tonight. I can't phone them directly if I get in trouble. I and everyone else needs to phone that 911. It's the same number we were taught when we were little: fire, any type of emergency, and share your details. This is what your emergency contact would have to know as well. So when you have that conversation with that person and leaving that information on the trip plan, they need to know that this is the number. Thanks. Next. And there's no charge for rescue. There's no charge for search and rescue in the province of British Columbia. So don't let that be a part of your decision if you should phone. If you need help, phone as soon as possible. Don't delay. Don't wait a few hours and then it gets darker, colder, incidents gets more severe. Phone right away and know that you won't be charged. There'll be no charge to you. There's a cost, of course, to search and rescue. That charge is not charged to you. There's no fee for you to pay. For more information on that, there's a great statement by the BC Search and Rescue Association on their website, and there's that link there, bcsara.com, no charge for SAR. Next. We have a wealth of information. AdventureSmart went national based on our provincial success. We're into our 19th year in British Columbia. It went national in 2009. I work closely and for the BC Search and Rescue Association, and we have an outdoor education page that is full of events. Tonight's one of them. We have a few more, 4 more to get through the winter. And then we have trail-specific safety videos for a lot of hiking enthusiasts in the summer, spring, and fall. And then we have a library of events. So every webinar we've ever delivered or special event online, we've collected that, and that's easy for you to watch too on demand. And that's at bcsara.com, outdoor education. Next. And here comes the show. So I was here to talk to you a little bit about our messaging and help remind you or introduce you to AdventureSmart, but Julianne's the show, and I'd like to introduce her. She started riding as a child at the cottage and got into mountain riding about 17 years ago. She rides because it brings her to the most beautiful places, and it's always an adventure of the unknown and known, because she's an excellent planner, and it keeps a big smile on her face, which she does have a beautiful one. Snowmobiling has become a way of life for her. She shaped her life around it and admires anyone who loves the sport as much as she does or would love to get into it. Her plans for the future include continuing to grow what she has as a wonderful business. She shreds mountain adventures right through North America, and it really fulfills her. She's bilingual in French and English. Tonight's English presentation, or else I would be out in left field. She's a full-time mama to Jackson in her free time. She rides mountain bikes. We should go for a ride one day, Julianne. Horses and surfs. And she's also an operations level 2 certified avalanche technician. That's another wonderful notch in her belt. So Julianne, the stage is yours, and welcome. And it's great to have you back. We've got her returning. She came last year, and so glad to have her back tonight.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Very honored to be back here. You guys do such an amazing job at just helping spread knowledge and education to the public and recreationalists for every season, every sport. And yeah, you're a big help for search and rescue as well, just trying to get those call out numbers down, which is great. Yeah, I absolutely love search and rescue. It's one of those things that I definitely can't leave. Basically, it's such a good group of people. It puts us through such amazing certifications, and just being there to help everybody in the public, it's something that very honored to do. So yeah, welcome. Thanks for having me. I mean, I'm here to talk to you guys about being ready for backcountry mountain snowmobiling. Yeah, mountain snowmobiling is a serious thing. It's very physically demanding. It encounters lots of things outside the box of just snowmobiling that you need to take into consideration, such as, avalanche education, first aid education, knowing how to make your plans, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about. So
Julie, as we get going, would you mind turning on your webcam? So we can see.
Yeah, totally. Let me just figure out how to do that.
Right under that green microphone.
Yeah, there it is. Perfect.
Perfect.
Thanks, Scott, for that. The tech master behind the scenes here, guys. He's got our back. So yeah, talking about pre-sled trip planning, everything that you should do before even considering, or as you're getting into the sport, I should say, not before you're considering getting into the sport, because you're going to need your snowmobile to get this education, or a lot of the education anyways. So yeah, AST1 and AST2 is definitely two things that you should definitely get as a recreationalist. There's lots of online tutorials with avalanche.ca. And then if you're one of those recreationalists that gets out like 80 to 100 days a year, I'd highly suggest you getting your Canadian Avalanche Association Operations Level 1. It allows you to kind of understand the snow a little bit more. It allows you to get that extra education that you need for being in the backcountry for so many days in a season. So yeah, that's basically what it comes to for avalanche education. And then obviously getting that mentorship with people that have higher certifications than you and that know a little bit more than you, and learning from the people that have been in the industry for a long time is definitely a perk. Wilderness first aid, minimum of a 40-hour course is definitely highly suggested. And the reason why wilderness is because sure, you can have your OFA level 3 or you know, some other high class, I guess, certification, but you take those, you take the knowledge from those courses and you get thrown into the wilderness without all of the easily accessible stuff, and you almost become a little bit useless because you don't really know how to, let's say, make a splint without the SAM splints or the, you know, back brace that you have easily accessible on the first floor of your building, or, you know, you got to improvise and make things out of stuff that you have, like sticks and stones pretty much, and yeah, rope and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, wilderness first aid's definitely highly suggested. Mapping and a navigation course, allowing you to understand how to read terrain before going into it, because very often when we go into the mountains, the visibility is not good, or, you know, there's a big snowstorm or something like that. And so you should know where those avalanche paths are before you go into the backcountry, and learn where north, south, east, west is. And, you know, the Google Earth is such an amazing tool, and we're going to go into it just briefly later on. But yeah, taking a mapping or navigation course will help you tremendously in making your trip planning a success. Taking a weather course is great. I mean, you can always pop up the weather on weather.ca or whatever, but being able to look at, you know, satellites and the imagery that changes over every hour, and knowing where the winds are coming from and where they're pushing all the snow and all that kind of stuff is really, really beneficial with your planning of your time in the backcountry as well. So yeah, taking a weather course. Outdoor survival. I mean, there's not very many courses being offered under that title, but there's lots of online stuff that you can look into on how to build a Quincy, or how to build a fire and have a heat repelling shield pushing the heat into you, and you know, there's lots of tips online. So get lots of outdoor survival tips before going out there and exposing yourself. Learn how to set up a landing zone for a helicopter during an emergency call. I'm actually, the next slide, we're going to go over that. So being on search and rescue, I've seen lots of, I wouldn't call them disasters, but like having loose items floating around and them getting sucked into the rotors as the helicopter is coming in for landing, or having trouble finding the group that needs help. Yeah, sure, we have your GPS location, but in very busy areas like, you know, Whistler, Revelstoke, Valemont, Golden, you have tons of snowmobilers on the mountain within that close proximity of the GPS coordinates. And so I'm going to give you guys a tip later on how to make it a little bit more efficient for search and rescue coming in. Learn sled mechanics and learn how to extract your snowmobile if it does break down, or if you, I mean, this year so far it's been a very low tide year with the snowpack, and so the rocks and the stumps and stuff are quite exposed. So learning how to fix your machine, or being able to take it out of the backcountry if you completely mangle your front end, and you know, things like that. Learn how to do those things before exposing yourself in the really far backcountry. Learn about wildlife encounters and respecting the, for say, caribou closures. Not so much on the coast, but more so in the interior. We have a lot of caribou closures and a lot more, I wouldn't say more wildlife, it's just different wildlife than the coast, I guess, if you would say. But yeah, we have closures, and there's a website called Snowmobile Selkirks that lets you know where the caribou closures are, and they have mapping that you can download into your GPS to make sure that you're not going into the caribou closures, and a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, learn about that. Supporting your local snowmobile club with a local membership, where every single snowmobile club in British Columbia is a not-for-profit organization, and they are working volunteers to make snowmobiling amazing for everybody. So whether it's buying a membership or paying your trail fees, it all goes towards, you know, grooming, the cost of the groomer, the cost of cabin maintenance, and yeah, they fight to keep recreational snowmobiling alive for us. So more strength in numbers as memberships go with the British Columbia Snowmobile Federation helps us as recreationalists, because we get to keep our recreational areas. We keep hearing more and more recreational areas closing down. So yeah, strength in numbers. So here I'm going to talk quickly about a helicopter landing zone. You definitely want it a minimum 120 feet by 120 feet flat area and a square as best as possible. You always want to be making this landing zone downwind from the patient, just because when a helicopter comes in, they like to land downwind, first of all, as a pilot, and second of all, it just makes less debris flying everywhere if there's lots of wind onto the patient. You want to make sure that it's in an open area with no trees or close slopes, or if you're down in the valley, you want to make sure that there's no like telephone lines or hydro poles, you know, that kind of stuff. You want to make sure that all loose items are secured, so like toques and gloves and light things that could fly up into the rotors. You want to make sure that that stuff is all secured and made sure that it doesn't go flying into the rotors. Flip all their sleds on the side. So this little picture that you guys see on the right hand side here, this is what it looks like from a helicopter. Obviously a helicopter wouldn't be coming in and landing here because there's too many trees, but think about if you're in a really busy zone, and sure, they have your GPS coordinates, but they're really trying to zone in on the group that needs help. If everybody in that group would put their snowmobile on their side, so you would have a side profile of the snowmobile facing up to the helicopter, then that helps search and rescue really distinguish quickly what group needs help. So yeah, think about that when you are calling in for help, how you place your snowmobiles around the patient. That will make landing a lot quicker. You want to communicate with the pilot on the radio. So very often with search and rescue, when you're making calls, say on your InReach or your Zoleo, they'll let you know what channel to communicate with the pilot when search and rescue is coming in. So just make sure that you're communicating with them, let them know, hey, the sleds are all on the sides. This is our group that needs help, and yeah, communicate through there. Stay far away from the rear rotors of the helicopter, so you're never approaching a helicopter. Very often when a helicopter lands with search and rescue, we don't expect any of the public to start walking towards the helicopter. The people in the helicopter will come out first, but if by any chance, you know, you just want to let everybody know, do not approach the helicopter. And if you do have to approach the helicopter, come in from the front only when the pilot gives signal to do so. So you'll watch them and then they'll kind of wave you over if you need to go. Okay, I'm going to share a little video with you guys about snowmobile safety gear and what you guys should be bringing. This is a video I made like 7 years ago, so it's a little bit outdated, but I'm going to share it with you and just fill you in on some changes at the end of the video.
We've always been told to be safe, to play safe. But what does that mean in the backcountry, deep in the mountains, in a winter environment? For me, it means everyone gets to go home at the end of the day. We are gripped by the draw of the experience as we explore the vast playgrounds around us. The temptation of powdered snow can feel exceptionally strong at times, the closer you get to it. It's great to follow our desires, but we must remember we are responsible for our own actions. When I head out, I ask myself, does this adventure have 100% of my attention? Have I thought of all the details? Safety means being prepared, and being prepared means being aware of the situations we get ourselves into. More than likely, it's going to be a surprise when adversity strikes. The more we practice our backcountry skills and prepare ourselves, the better we are able to react to the unexpected challenges that come our way. The goal of this episode is to encourage thinking about backcountry safety. How capable and prepared are we? How capable and prepared are the people we ride with? In this day and age of increased connectedness, it can be too easy to feel not far away from home as we head out into our backcountry zones. The reality is, it doesn't take long to get out far.
We left Pemby, we drove 35 approximately kilometers up the valley. We lost cell phone range at 20K on our way up. We've unloaded and we've got another 25 something K to go on the Forest Service Road. It's amazing to think how quickly you can get here on your own. I also think it's important to not forget the inherent challenge of terrain and distance covered it took to get here. And I'm about to lay out all my essential gear for backcountry survival and safety. So on the table in front of me, I've got my complete kit that I bring into the backcountry with me every day. I've got my tools and ropes, I've got my medical and survival kits, I've got my communication, and then I've got my avalanche gear. I personally have a wilderness first aid certification, and it's just as important to have the stuff as well as know how to use your stuff. This is a great pre-packaged first aid kit that Mountain Sledder Snowmobile magazine puts together. It's a deluxe 71-piece kit. Includes pretty much everything you need to fix up minor injuries in backcountry. The reason why I carry a couple of bivy sacks is just because it has multi-uses to it. It's basically a thin material that's waterproof, heat shield, and it's durable. So you can build shelters, keep yourself warm in it, multi-uses for it. This is a great pre-packaged survival kit by Survive Outdoors Logger. It includes everything for you to make a shelter, build a fire, and signal rescuers. These are gels and chews, and they're great survival items, but they're also really good items to give you that extra boost when you need to get back to the truck after a super deep stuck fest kind of day. This is my fix-it kit. In this kit I carry things like a wood saw to either get kindling for a fire or to cut a tree down to get yourself unstuck. I carry the tools that are essential for general fixings or adjustments on sleds. This is an air shock pump because I rock air shocks from Fox, and it doesn't hurt to carry spare parts. A couple essentials are zap straps and a couple different kinds of tape. I carry a couple of different ropes as far as lengths and strengths. Examples of use of rope is if you need to tow your buddy's sled out. I carry 3 different types of communication devices. I've got a sat phone, I've got an inReach, and I've got radio. I carry the Iridium sat phone 9555 is the model. This thing's awesome because you can actually call for help or call people that you need to communicate with and let them know exactly what you need in the backcountry. The inReach is really good to text message and email 160 character messages to people just to let them know, what is going on, and if you're going to be late because you're stuck, or don't send out help, we're all good, kind of thing. Yes, it has an SOS button, but the search and rescue does not know what they are rescuing to. Are they rescuing to a hurt body, or are they rescuing to somebody who is lost in the backcountry? They won't know what to bring you. Another cool thing about the inReach is that it can track you throughout the day, and people can watch you travel through the backcountry online if need be, which is really rad. So I carry a good radio with an external mic just for easy access that's attached to my backpack. With this setup, I find that I use it a lot more just because it's so easy access. It allows me to keep tabs on the group as we're traveling through the backcountry, and it also allows me to notify the group behind me if we're punching trail into a zone to either go left or right, because left is a no-no zone. This is my Avi kit and snow science tools. I am certified operations level 1 and working slowly towards my operations level 2. And I teach AST1s every year, snowmobile specific. My avalanche safety gear consists of my transceiver, my probe, my shovel, and my airbag. I carry snow science tools because I'm constantly observing snow and digging pits. It's important as a guide to log everything you have in your information book, just to be able to look back on it and make sure that you're making safe decisions. All this gear is essential when you're going out snowmobiling in the backcountry, but by far the most important thing is to know how to use it all properly. Being prepared means equipping yourself with the right gear and skills essential to backcountry survival and problem solving.
Perfect. So as I mentioned, that video was made like 7 years ago. And so there's a couple of things that I'm gonna just add on top of that video. As far as the inReach goes, Search and Rescue does know what to bring you because they're communicating with you when you make a call. So, or when you make a SOS call and you're texting. So yeah, inReach is great. The downfall about sat phones is, you know, you're in this world that's orbiting, and when the Earth loses its connection to that satellite, when you're making a call, the call gets dropped. So this day and age, I almost think that the inReach is a little bit better, just because it's a consistent line of communication and you're not getting dropped and having to call back, and you know, time is missing kind of thing. And there's also a new device that just came out recently that runs on Iridium satellites as well, and that is the Zoleo. So that's another really good one. As far as like the new iPhone coming out, I wouldn't really depend on that for emergency communication device. They run on satellites that are not as dependable as the Iridium satellites in North America, or like in BC, I'd say, because I don't really actually know for the rest of the world. But I know for BC, it's not super dependable. So if you're going out in the backcountry and your only means of communication with the outside world is your iPhone, I wouldn't fully depend on it, even this new iPhone 14 or whatever. Another thing about that I want to mention with the first aid gear, I mean, that's my like recreational little first aid stuff. I've got a lot more in my tunnel bag, and I've got a lot more in my truck. So I carry like full on vac mat in my truck. I have vac mat for limbs, so smaller vac mat stuff. I've got oxygen tank, I've got toboggan, enough stuff to do my own rescue if Search and Rescue is not able to come and get me, or come and help, basically. My main goal is to get my patient out as soon as possible to comfort. So yeah, I have all the gear as well in my truck when I travel. But as a recreationalist, everything that you saw on that screen is definitely a necessity. Having something to deal with major bleeds too is something that you should have, like a tourniquet and like some sort of quick clot pad or something like that. Definitely worth getting. And yeah, in your survival gear, just make sure, I know I didn't mention this in the video, but make sure you have multiple ways to start fires. Just having one lighter and all of a sudden you drop it in the snow, you're kind of screwed. So yeah, I have waterproof matches, I have flints, I have 3 lighters, I have multiple ways, because when you're stuck in a winter environment in the backcountry, you need to stay warm, you need to have food, and you need to stay dry, and you need to drink water. So those are the 4 essentials that you should definitely be able to have or keep warm and to stay alive. One other thing I didn't mention in the video is having a light. So sure, your snowmobile has a light on it, but if you're stuck in the backcountry at night and you're trying to get out, or you're lost, when your snowmobile goes up a slope, your headlight is pointing up to the sky. So being able to see where you're going is not going to happen at that point. So I carry, it's a local company from Nelson here called Lynx OGT. They produce amazing headlights. Lots of search and rescue crews have them. And just for this seminar and everybody watching, they are offering a 10% discount with the code BC10. So that's lowercase b, lowercase c, and 10 on lynxogt.com, lynxogt.com, and that discount is good for 1 week. And the cool thing about their lights is that they have a little mount that you can put on your chin of your snowmobile, or of your helmet, I mean, and it shines. You can hook the headlamp up to that, and you can see where you're going as you're driving on your snowmobile. And they're rechargeable too, which is really nice, being able to plug them in and not have to change batteries. So yeah. Oh, and I'm an operations level 2 certified now. I know in the video I said I was working towards my certification, and I've finally gotten it over many years. So I'm just going to continue sharing you guys the PowerPoint. Group dynamics. So that's another big thing with snowmobiling and staying safe in the backcountry. Riding with the same crew versus riding with a different crew or different people all the time. I'm going to talk briefly about that. When you start to ride with the same crew, you start to really know how everybody operates within the crew and how everybody communicates, and you also know, everybody's level of certification when it comes to trusting them to dig you out if something's going to happen, or trusting them to help you in a first aid scenario if you get hurt, that kind of stuff. So obviously when you first are trying to find your group to continuously ride with, you're going over these things. You're making sure that everybody that you're riding with has some sort of knowledge on to fix first aids, or like to fix you if you get hurt. You want to make sure everybody knows how to use their avalanche gear. You want to make sure that they're, safe people that take into consideration, let's say you're at a lower ability level rider on a snowmobile and they're better. You don't want to go riding with them if they're constantly dragging you into the weeds or dropping into gnarly stuff and like not able to get out. And so yeah, you tend to find your group and you tend to stick with it, which is probably the smartest way to go. But we all like to meet new friends and go out with different crews. And so if that's the case, then just make sure you have that talk with them before. Make sure, somebody in the group has a satellite communication device. Make sure everybody has a functioning radio so you can speak within each other, within your group. Have these conversations, making plans with them, knowing what kind of snowmobile they have, knowing their ability, that kind of stuff. It all makes you able to line yourself up for success for a good trip in the backcountry, basically. Reviewing land as a group in Google Earth before going out into your expedition. You're able to see the land, and it allows you to answer questions such as, does it meet the group's riding abilities? Are there any danger spots? It allows you to make a plan A and a plan B. It allows you to see the decision-making spots. It allows you to kind of figure out the turnaround spot and around what time. The whole buddy system is definitely huge too. When you're considering your crew, you want to make sure that you have somebody you can rely on within, let's say you're a group of 7 or 8. You want to make sure that at least one buddy in that group is you're keeping eyes on them, basically. It's hard to keep eyes on 8 people on the mountain, but when you have one person to keep an eye on, and all of a sudden that person goes around the bend and all of a sudden their snowmobile flips on top of them and they're stuck underneath it, they want you to be there to help them, and vice versa. So having that buddy is great. Energy check-ins and performance based on that. So, as when the day starts, everyone has fresh energy and everyone's all gung-ho, good to go. And then let's say it's a super deep day and everybody gets stuck, and all of a sudden 1 o'clock comes around, you're past your turnaround point, you're pretty far in the backcountry. You need to start thinking, where is my energy sitting? Do I have it in me to perform 100% to be able to get out of here? That kind of stuff. So that's definitely something big to take into consideration. So I'm just going to share another screen here with you guys, and it is Google Earth. Give me 1 second. I just need to pop it up, and I'm going to give you guys a little kind of example scenario of what I am talking about here. So I'm just going to share this screen. I'm going to just Google something close to me here. There we go. Okay, so you Google your snowmobile area, whether it's, Brandywine and on the coast, or Boulder Mountain and Revelstoke, and it really allows you to give you a kind of good look on what the terrain looks like. So this is a parking lot right here. Then you have a road that goes up the valley, and we're looking like it's like deep, dark trees. So we're below tree line here. And here we are, we're gonna start to climb into tree line. You can see the trees are starting to get a little bit lighter. You're starting to see a little bit more cut blocks, things like that. And so here is, hold on a second, I'm just gonna change the view so you guys can see kind of head on as you're coming into the area. Okay, let me just move it over a little bit. Whoops, like this. Okay, so this is the Forest Service Road, and then and then the Forest Service Road ends right about here. Now, if you look to the left here, we have a massive face. This is called Ladybird Face. And there's usually a single track that kind of goes through here. And you're going through the whole avalanche path right here. You can see the avalanche path because you can see the trees. They kind of disperse, like you got thick trees right here, and then you got no thick trees here. You got a bunch of rock here, and then you got thick trees again, and then you got a big avalanche path right here. You can see the avalanches have taken out all the trees. And then anyways, long story short, the cabin is over here, and then you got big mountain stuff in the back. So if I was making a plan and I had never been here before, I'd follow the Forest Service Road up the valley, and then I'd say, hey, when we reach right about here, I think this is a pretty big decision-making point. If I'm observing shooting cracks and whoomph-like sounds on the way up, if I have visuals of old avalanche debris or even new avalanche debris, I should say, as I'm going up the Forest Service Road, and I get to this point and I know that there's this massive face right here, this is going to be a deciding point saying, hey, we've had lots of red flags pop out at us about, you know, avalanche, active snow moving. I don't think it's smart for us to go to the cabin today because we have to expose ourselves in this terrain trap. It's a gully that kind of goes, that basically captures all the snow down here. It doesn't have room to fan back up here. And so you're exposing yourself to some pretty high risk going through here to get to the cabin. So this would be my decision-making point number one. You know, if it's a low hazard day and I'm not seeing any sort of movement in the snow, then maybe sure it is safe to pass. Not putting every single group everybody in the group exposed all at the same time. I'd probably pass one at a time, regroup in safe, thick trees, and radio everybody, say, hey, I'm in the safe trees, the next person can come, regroup, and then same thing, one at a time, pass if it's a low hazard day. If you're seeing a bunch of red flags, this is a decision-making point saying, hey, nope, this is not a safe zone. I think I'm going to go back and play in this cut block right here where it's a little bit safer, and maybe I'll play in the trees over here where it's a little bit safer. So yeah, basically that's my little Google Earth analogy of making your plan and making your trip plan and stuff like that. It really helps you with being successful and reading the terrain before you get into it and making a plan. So yeah, next is discussing the plan and the goal based on the avalanche forecast. So when you check avalanche.ca, you're going to check the weather as well. I'm a big fan of windy.com to look at weather, and the weather model, the NAM weather model, is the best one to look at for mountains if you're looking at that one. And it allows you to see like freezing levels, and allows you to see how much precip is coming, and it's pretty accurate, so it's good. You want to make sure that you know, everybody's on the same page with the group riding ability and the fitness of everyone. You want to take into consideration these things because, you know, let's say you have somebody who's not fit and it's their first time going snowmobiling. You don't want to bring them into a gnarly zone where they're just going to gas out by 9 a.m. and not be able to go anywhere, because then the whole group has to suffer. You know, you're digging that person out all day, or, you know, that person is feeling really bad for keeping the group back, you know, that kind of stuff. So take that in consideration. You also want to take into consideration the sleds involved. You know, if you have a bunch of people with brand new snowmobiles, really good riders, and they all have turbos, and then you have somebody who's a newer rider that has, you know, an 07 Rev, and don't get me wrong, it's a great snowmobile, but it might have a little bit more chances of a mechanical failure, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm not going to share the screen about weather just because we're running out of time, but basically I was going to go over a couple of different weather models and stuff like that. And then last but not least, you want to discuss human factors. So for example, the most recent one that happened, I was teaching an avalanche course last weekend, and one of the persons that's mentoring with us right now with She Shreds Mountain Adventures, his dog took off first thing in the morning, and so he was late coming in, and so he was a little bit pressured to drive a little bit faster to get to the parking lot, and he had a bit of a crash, I guess, not a crash. He basically slid out around a corner and went over onto a snowbank, and he was able to get out in 4 low, but he was a little shook up. You know, he gets to the parking lot and he says, listen, I just want to let you know that I had this happen to me on the way here, so my mind is a little bit out of the ball game. I'm a little bit stressed, you know. I said, don't worry, thank you very much for letting me know. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on you and just making sure that your head is in the right space as we're moving through the backcountry and stuff like that. So yeah, human factors is huge. It affects somebody's thinking ability, and yeah, you definitely want to make sure you talk about that stuff. Next slide. So in the end, our main goal is to reach your destination at the end of the day after a solid day of backcountry hooning with your buddies. And that destination is home. So if you are being a due diligent recreationalist on your snowmobile and taking into consideration these things, I'm going to read you 2 stats here from the BC SARAS that happened last winter. So these are stats from last winter. Snowmobile incidents were among the top SAR rescue type in British Columbia. In this order, sledding was number 1, hiking was number 2, and skiing was number 3. And the top reasons for BC SAR replying to emergency callouts is injury. And the second one is lost or disoriented. And the number 3 is exceeding abilities. So an example of exceeding abilities is, you know, if you see a track and you say, ooh, this track looks fun to follow, and then all of a sudden you start getting sucked down deep into steep tree terrain, and then you realize, oh my goodness, I don't have the ability to get out of here. So that's an example of that. So if you as a recreationalist do your due diligence to become a safe sledder, we as snowmobilers can be safe users of our beautiful backcountry and reduce the amount of callouts for our volunteers at Search and Rescue. Thank you very much for listening to me, you guys. I believe so I'm going to hand it over to Sandra. She has a couple of other things she wants to let you know.
Actually, I have a couple of questions that have come in. I was wondering if you'd be able to take them. First off, I was wondering, how often do you change your plans? Like, you get out there and you end up doing that. Can you give me an example of when you may have actually changed your plans and why you did it?
Absolutely. So the most recent actually was our last warming. So just a couple of weeks ago, we had a plan to go out into the backcountry and punch into. I really like to look at Google Earth and just kind of go with the whim in places that I've never been. And so yeah, we looked at the Google Earth one the night before, and we said, hey, let's make this our final destination. We took into account obviously the avalanche forecast for the day and the weather and all that, but as we were traveling through the backcountry, we were noticing lots of signs of instability. So places where we would regroup, having 2 or 3 more snowmobiles, we'd feel that woomph, that crack settlement of the bad layers that were under us. And so that was red flags. We were noticing shooting cracks along the Forest Service Road, going along like just small slopes and stuff. And we were testing small slopes and convex rolls on our way up, and they were moving. And so yeah, we didn't make it to our destination. We decided as a group not to go because it was too dangerous. And my level of risk has lowered quite a bit since having a kid, actually. And so there's people with higher levels of risk and there's people with lower levels of risk. And so yeah, talking about it within your group is smart, just so everyone's kind of on the same page and you don't feel bad for you're the only one calling quits because you're the only one in the group that has a low risk tolerance or whatever. But yeah, it happens quite a bit. It's not something that it is something I take quite seriously. I don't let it get to me to say, hey, I had this in mind and I've worked really hard to get here and we're going, you know. It's safety first, and I don't want to die. So yeah, it happens a lot.
That's fair.
It happens. I should say it happens a lot when the conditions are dangerous. It doesn't happen very often when the conditions are stable and that kind of stuff. That's what.
So the later in the season, the more you should be having sort of a secondary option, another thing that you might want to do instead, kind of.
Yeah, it's all season long. Like right now, it's happening now because there's so much instability in the snowpack. And then in the later season, like in the springtime, when the spring diurnal happens and it starts to warm up, in midday, like stuff does move when snow warms up. So it happens all the time.
Mm. You mentioned earlier sticking with the same group, and you've mentioned that a few times throughout. But there are some people who are on this call who maybe do meetups, and I think there might even be a person or two who might do something solo.
Mhm.
So, what are your thoughts on that? How can we reduce the risk when it comes to either meeting up with people out at the trailhead who you've never sledded with before, or going by yourself?
Yeah, so meeting up with people that you have never gone out with before, totally cool. I mean, I love meeting new people, but I definitely make sure that everybody's on the same page, that I don't personally go out with anybody that has no avalanche training. I want to make sure that they at least know how to use their transceiver, probe, and shovel. If anything were to happen to me, I want to make sure that they can dig me out or at least get to me in a timely fashion. But yeah, making sure that they have the certification is huge, making sure that they have the gear. When you're going out with different crews, like if you have all the gear, like the satellite communication device, you want to make sure they have a radio. If you have all the gear, then you at least want to tell them, say, hey, I have all this gear. What do you guys have? Just to make sure that everybody knows who has what and that all your parameters are covered when it comes to the essentials. Everybody should have their own survival kit and food and water. You're not going to start packing all the food and the water for everybody in your group. But yeah, there's certain things that you are responsible for, and if you're riding with a bunch of different people all the time, it's one of those things that you should talk about before leaving the trailhead. And then riding alone, I don't suggest. There's so many levels of risk. Snowmobiling, you just go by accidentally off the road and the snowmobile flips on top of you and you're stuck. Like you're in a tree well, and who's going to help you? Who's going to help you if an avalanche happens? If you're solo, there's so much more risk that you're taking that it's not smart. I don't suggest it.
Yeah, it becomes your risk goes up so much more because in it, like, you might be fully prepared, right? You might have all that stuff, but if you can't get to it because you're the one injured, pretty useless, isn't it?
Exactly.
Tina wanted to know what type of headlamp you were mentioning. Lynx headlamp. Which is the specific model that you use?
Yeah, he's got some really rad models. I have 4 different kinds. Every time he comes
You're
out,
a flashlight
every time,
aficionado too, are you? I have tons of
right?
flashlights.
Every time he comes out with a new one, I'm like, ooh, that one's brighter, and so I always get the most brightest one. And they're so bright, it lights up like a whole massive area. And yeah, so yeah, Lynx OGT, LYNX, and then OGT. As an abbreviation, and .com is the website. And yeah, you get whatever model suits you for what you do. Obviously, if you need a big peripheral, you got to get the one with the most luminance, or I forget the name of the word, but luminance, I forget.
Lumens is correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lumens. Yeah. So yeah, you get the one with the biggest lumen. It all depends on your budget too. I think his most expensive one is like $160, and then his least expensive one is under $100. So, and then you got the mount. It's like it goes over the mouthpiece of the helmet, and it just clicks into the helmet. And so yeah, it's
Okay.
really easy to put on because it's kind of hard to put a headlamp on with a helmet visor and stuff like that. So he's got this cool little mount that you can get that's extra. But yeah, the discount code is BC10 and it's valid for a week.
And I put it in the chat already, so you can copy it from there. Perfect. We're running out of runway here. Sandra, I think did we want to do a quick poll?
Yeah, let's do the poll. You read my mind. I wanted to see if anyone had any inkling of the answers to our questions. We just got one here, but which area of the province has the most search and rescue calls by snowmobilers? And seasonally, we have user groups that ask for search and rescue for help a little bit more than others, just based on the season, and that number of users that do that activity. So in the summertime, as you try to pick your answers there, you got Vancouver Island, Northern BC, Sea to Sky, Kootenays, Sunshine Coast. In the summertime, we know it's hikers on the South Coast. Big numbers, big population, right up easy access towards the Sea to Sky corridor, throughout the valley, up towards Pemby, Julianne's old stomping grounds. And so that's an easy equation to think, oh, it would be hikers, but we're curious if you have any idea what it is here for the winter time that has the most calls, what region you think that would be. And we've got Sea to Sky at 25%. Okay, that's pretty high. And then Kootenays at 66, and Northern BC at 900. The East Kootenays is it. There's no question. We spent some time trying to increase awareness a little bit more in that region. Have guests come on like Julianne to help us spread the love provincially. And I see out of province visitors. So that's exciting for everyone who's not from BC tonight. Thank you. But spending time to educate people in that area or who are going to that area through our partners, affiliates, tourism, BC Snowmobile Federation, Let's Ride BC, BC Search and Rescue Association, tourism reps, Revelstoke Search and Rescue, Golden District, and Search and Rescue. Those are the two user groups, the two SAR groups that would be affected mostly in that region. But that band, that corridor in there, it's a popular region to go sledding, and it's a busy time for snowmobile incidents, for search and rescue. So the more we can be prepared on a whole, but note that region is a little bit higher call volume. It's a great spot to go and play on the snow. There's no question about that. So thanks for playing that. Julianne, thank you. That was awesome. Loved the Google scenario. I loved that you gave an example of kind of turning around, changing your plans on the fly. And we talk about sound judgment a lot, and when should they? And we support that they can and should change their mind out there depending on the snowpack. This winter is a unique one, right? Depending on weather, depending on group dynamics. You talk about energy check-ins. I love that. I'm going to use that for sure. And these are key things to incorporate into. And so many people make plans of, okay, we're going to sled the first weekend of February. This is it. We've taken time off work. We're going to go. We're packed. Groceries are packed. We're just stoked, right? Stoke is high. People come from other areas. You make a plan. You get there, maybe that equation changes a little bit. That sound judgment is key. Maybe it's a turnaround on the trail that morning, 3/4 of the way in, or you change it completely.
Totally.
And I love that you incorporate. So go ahead.
The best part about that, though, is if you have to do a turnaround or if your plan A doesn't come through, the people that you ride with should make up for that kind of bummer decision, because then you can still have fun together. So it's good.
Oh yeah, there's always something fun to do after that. There's no question about it. And you hit the nail on the head when we talk about destination, and that's always home. So the peak or that summit is only halfway. Right? It's only halfway. That's the turnaround point. We still have to come down and get out and get home. So the destination is home, no question about it. Thanks for offering the discount to links. Love it. And everyone who stuck around to the end tonight does get 1 month free trial from FatMap. And Scott can toss that into the chat as well. Send us your questions. Send us any information you might have wanted to learn a little bit more about tonight. We stay in touch with Julianne and we can connect you to her. We're all pretty quick at getting back on our socials. So I know that you're as good at that as I am, Julianne. So that's fun if anybody has questions. If you want to join us again next week, we have our Backcountry Snow Safety, which is all about the 3 T's and what to do in an emergency in detail. Tonight was just a skirt of it all. We get into that in major detail. So thanks to everyone who joined us tonight. Scott, thanks again for joining us. As tech support, Julianne, it's great to see you again. All the best throughout the rest of the season. Keep up the good work out there.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And thanks again, Scott. It's always a pleasure. And thanks to everyone who joined us. We're going to sign off now. And thanks for taking the time to get informed and helping us reduce the number and severity of search and rescue calls for the province of BC. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, folks.